Hello, everybody. Welcome to Generation 19 Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Philip. If someone were to ask you this question, who is the greatest? How would you answer that question? What if people were talking about this in the context that we find this in Scripture? Here's where this topic came up with Jesus and his disciples. In Luke 22, 24 through 27, it says, "And there was also strife among them, which of them should be accounted the greatest. But he, Jesus, said unto them, He that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that does serve." Wow. Are you hearing what's going on in this situation? Here's Jesus having his final meeting, which he has told these guys, these young men, hey, look, the time has come. I'm about to give my life on the cross. He's having his final meeting with them. They are all into talking to one another and striving over who's the greatest, who's going to be considered the greatest among them. They're basically saying, hey, I'm more important than you. I deserve this position, right? And so not only is this question completely inappropriate for this context, but when you consider what these guys are doing, they are literally interfering with what Jesus is trying to get done in that hour. So let's unpack this. When we look at this, I want you to understand, in this setting, Jesus only had a few hours, and he knew that he was about to be betrayed. He knows Judas is about to leave that table. He knows Peter will deny him. He knows he's about to carry the weight of the world's sin on the cross, something that no one has ever done, something that no man could have been prepared for except Christ. If there's ever a night to focus on eternal things, this was it. This is when you really need to be dialed in. This is when you really need to be focused. This is when you need to know and hear what Jesus is saying, and not all wrapped up into your own ideas and your own mind and all those things. They're talking about it though. They're going back and forth with each other. You can just kind of hear them banter. They're arguing over who's the greatest. The disciples are basically verbally competing for a title, and they don't even know what they're asking for. It's easy to criticize them, but if we're honest, we still have some of the same arguments today. We just use some different language. And what we say, we say these things on social media and all kinds of places. Who's the most successful? Who's the most influential? Who's the most followed? Who's got the most money? And who's the most talented? And who's the most important? The question has not changed in 2,000 years. I really feel like that, especially in this country, even from our president on down, there's this constant competition to climb the hill and be the most important, the most successful, the one that everybody looks to. Today, we're going to discuss and discover that Jesus completely turned the world's definition of greatness upside down. First of all, let's look at the hunger to be great. Let's begin with an important truth. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be great. or to do great things or to be a part of something that is great. Okay? God created us, and He created us with a capacity to know that we're important and significant. So the search for significance is a part of an internal instinctive desire. Okay? The problem isn't the desire for greatness. It's not the desire for greatness that's the problem. The problem is how we define it and how we try to achieve it. Our culture measures greatness by visibility. Okay? The bigger your platform, the greater you are, the more followers, the greater you are, the more money, the more influence. But I want to tell you something. Oftentimes, who people are publicly is not who they are privately. And so you have people who are uber wealthy, and have lots of influence, and they've done significant things. They've created all kinds of technology. We see this. And yet behind closed doors, their marriages fail. Their children are not connected to them. Their children turn out to struggle and have all kinds of issues in life. And we can't look at this as greatness, okay? Just because people are in the spotlight and they're famous doesn't make them great. Jesus never condemned the desire to be great. He simply redefined what greatness looks like. The disciples wanted crowns. Jesus talked about service, not crowns. He talked about laying your life down for others. They wanted recognition, but Jesus demonstrates complete humility. Think about this for a second. He died on a cross, practically naked before the entire world. The issue isn't ambition, it was the direction of their ambition. And I would just say this, that most of our human ambitions just need to be crucified. They need to be eliminated, because much of what we are aspiring to do is really for ourselves, to make ourselves a name. Here's the other thing, is that the world, and the way the world looks at who is great and why you're great and things of this nature. Just think about what has happened recently with the World Cup and all of these soccer players and all of the fans and all the things. Look at all the hype and the things that have happened in this World Cup series. And how many people have sought to be in the spotlight, and how many people have wanted to be seen and heard and used just something as simple as the games to promote themselves for a chance in the spotlight. Every culture has a scoreboard. The world celebrates people who are seen, especially athletes, actors, influencers, CEOs, and celebrities. I don't have a thing against a man or a woman's personal success or their wealth. I think the biggest challenge that I see is that oftentimes these people, they don't use their success for the sake of the kingdom. They use their success for the promotion of their own kingdom. But because some success is dangerous, because what happens is it turns into your identity, okay? And our generation has been trained to measure life by comparison. And so we're constantly comparing ourselves. And oftentimes we're idealistically comparing ourselves to people that we don't even know. We don't even know how they really live or what they really do with their time. We only know what they do when they're on our screens. And yet we want to be them, but we don't really even know them. Our generation has been trained by, a sense of followers and views and likes and influence. And this subject can really drag, because what we're doing is every day we're looking at these screens and we're measuring our life by others who've accomplished getting all kinds of views and all kinds of things. We were having this conversation the other day that it seems that many of the influencers just happen to get in at the right time. And so now they've got a big audience because they caught everybody when we were having COVID shutdowns and nobody had anything to do, so they just started turning their phones on and watching YouTube videos. Think about it. Comparison is exhausting because someone will always appear to have more. The world's definition of greatness constantly changes. One day you're celebrated, and the next day you're forgotten. I'm going to tell you something. As a pastor, I know this to be so true. One day I'm the best pastor on the planet. The next day they want to have nothing to do with me or the church. It's just so real. That's a terrible foundation for your identity. I certainly can't hang my hat on who does or doesn't attend the church that I pastor. Jesus offers something so much better. He tells us to stop chasing applause and start pursuing Him and learning to make your life about being faithful to Him. We call it the audience of one. We do it for Him because heaven keeps a very different scoreboard. Jesus flipped the pyramid upside down, okay? He says, and you got to hear me on this, listen very carefully. This is what He says. The kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them. In other words, the world climbs over people to get to the top. The world climbs over people to get to the top. It is a vicious dog-eat-dog who can get there first mentality with the world. And they're going to eat and destroy their own in order to make a name for themselves. It's about power, it's about control, it's about recognition, and it's about status. And then Jesus says something revolutionary, but not so with you. So when he makes this statement, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, He says, but not so with you. That's one of the most powerful statements in Scripture. The kingdom is different. That's what He's trying to get them to see. He's looking at His disciples and He's saying, listen, don't let this world's system control you. Don't let it set your values. What is important is that you learn as a disciple, as one sent to represent Christ, is that yes, you go live in the world, but you don't become like the world. So important for us. So here's what Jesus said. When we make it important to do it His way, this is what He says. He says, He answers the question, the greatest among you should become like the youngest. In Jewish culture, the youngest had the lead status. Then He says, the leader should become like the servant. Imagine how shocking that sounded. Kings weren't servants. Leaders gave orders. Servants washed feet. But that's exactly what Jesus did. John tells us during that very meal, during that Last Supper, in that upper room, when the disciples are arguing about who's the greatest, Jesus wrapped himself in a towel, knelt down before his disciples, and washed their feet. The greatest person in the room became the lowest servant in the room. Think about this. In biblical times, people wore sandals. They were leather shoes that were open. Their feet were dirty. They were filthy. They walked streets that were muddy, and all kinds of things were on their feet. Their feet smelled. And here's Jesus, disrobing himself from his daily garments, putting on the towel of a servant, bending low to wash the feet of the disciples, to wash the dirt from their feet, and serving them in this moment when their